Africa, barrage of discriminatory laws stoking hate against LGBT persons last year witnesses a surge in discriminatory legislation directed against LGBT across Africa, said Amnesty International today. In a new briefing looking at 12 African countries, Amnesty International documents how legal systems were increasingly weaponized in 2023 to systematically target and discriminate against LGBT individuals. This includes instances where laws were egregiously employed to persecute and marginalize members of the LGBT community, highlighting a distressing trend of legal mechanisms being used as instruments of oppression. Across Africa, LGBT persons find themselves contending with a disturbing regression of progress, facing relentless protests against their identities, and confronting formidable obstacles to their legal and social rights, said Amnesty International Regional Director for Eastern and Southern Africa. Arbitrary arrests and detentions have become all too common, treating the mere act of being oneself as a criminal offense. In some places, the death penalty looms as a terrifying specter, a brutally unjust punishment for simply being who they are. We face what can only be described as a deepening crisis of homophobic lawfare, weaponization of laws against LGBT persons. In Africa, 31 countries still criminalize consensual same-sex sexual activity, despite the clear contradiction with established African Union and international human rights standards. There has been a trend indicating a stiffening of existing laws in some African nations. In Uganda, for instance, where consensual same-sex activity was already illegal, the situation has worsened with passage of the Draconian Anti-Homosexuality Act in 2023. An unanimous wave of similarly ordered legislation is on the brink of ascent across the continent. Amnesty International is calling on African states and governments to publicly acknowledge and protect the human rights of all people, equally without discrimination. They must also repeal or refrain from efforts to criminalize consensual same-sex conduct, as such legislation cannot comply with international or regional human rights standards and basic principles of human dignity and equality. This is crucial to acknowledge that these challenges faced by LGBT people in Africa extended beyond the realm legality, encompassing and profounding struggle for the hearts and minds of societies. However, the abuse of law has undoubtedly heightened their vulnerability and underlines the urgent necessary for coordinate regional and international intervention, said Samira Daud, Amnesty International's regional director for Western and Central Africa.